Bonjour et bienvenue à tout le monde. Alors, la présentation aujourd'hui, ça va être en français et en anglais. Donc, oh, est-ce que j'attendrai encore une minute peut-être pour voir? Alors, nous avons des personnes dans 5 zones différentes, je crois. Donc, je suis à Arlington et puis nous avons des invités à la côte ouest des États-Unis et bien sûr, il y a des personnes qui sont maintenant au Sénégal. Donc, merci d'être venu. Je sais que le samedi, c'est un peu difficile, peut-être un peu compliqué, mais je suis ravie de voir tout le monde ici aujourd'hui. Alors, je suis Katie Wheelock et je suis avec Vive l'expérience. Euh, voilà, donc je fais des voyages d'immersion pour des professeurs de langue française. Et il y avait quelques professeurs qui avaient vraiment envie de faire la connaissance de ce programme quand nous étions au Sénégal. Et c'est comme ça qu'on est allé au bureau à Dakar et on a fait la connaissance de Christina Wilson et Fatou Fall. Et nous avons parlé avec eux pour le programme et je me suis dit en rentrant, pourquoi pas inviter des professeurs aux États-Unis d'apprendre un peu plus sur les programmes et apprendre c'est quoi ces échanges et entendre des paroles des anciens boursiers ou des gens qui ont habité au Sénégal ou aux États-Unis. Alors, c'est pour cela que nous sommes ici et je vais donner la parole à Christina et Fatou en anglais et en français. Ça dépend de la personne, de préférence en français s'il est possible.
Merci, Katie. Donc voilà, je vais mélanger un peu le français et anglais parce que j'ai mes collègues de Washington qui sont là, qui parlent pas trop le français. So just an overview of what we're going to talk about today. Introductions. Thank you, Katie, for telling us a little bit more about Vive l'Expérience. Like she mentioned, we had the opportunity to meet last time that they brought a group of French teachers over to Senegal, which was really wonderful. Fatou and I were able to meet them in our office and talk a little bit more about the YES program, which we're going to get into, along with some other programs offered by American councils. So my name is Christina Wilson. I'm the country representative in Senegal. Fatou, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Oui, bonjour à tous et merci d'être là. Donc, moi, c'est Fatou Fall et je suis la coordinatrice des programmes YES. Je vais faire la présentation en anglais, mais après, je pourrai répondre à toutes vos questions en français. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Fatou. And we're also joined by Amanda Morgan from our DC office and Sky Wallace Henry, also from our DC office, who are going to be giving you some more details about the different programs, exchange programs for high schoolers offered through American Councils for International Education. Yeah. And then we also have our alumni, 2 alumni. We have Evan Hovey, who participated on the Yes Abroad program in 22-23, if I'm not mistaken, Evan. And so who came to Senegal. And then we have Sherin Fall, who is one of our Senegalese participants who went to the United States this past year and did her exchange program in the US. So you will be hearing from both of them as well. Oh, Katie, we can't hear you.
I just said perfect. Et je continue. Voilà.
Yeah, so with that, I think this slide is for my wonderful colleague Sky, who will give you some more information.
Will not butcher French, despite the fact that I was once fluent in it. Shockingly, I understood everything you guys said, so that feels really great. But I also live in a bilingual house that is not French bilingual, and did Peace Corps in another country that is a Romance language. So you would hear some sort of combination of Spanish, Romanian, and French if I tried speaking. So I am the program manager of the reciprocal exchanges of Flex and Yes. Just a little bit of background on the Yes program, which operates in Senegal and the United States and about 35 other countries. It was started as a citizen diplomacy program following the events of September 11th, 2001. as a way for the State Department through citizen diplomacy to engage young people from countries with significant Muslim populations. And it was based on a program that's 10 years older that was started at the dissolution of the Soviet Union to engage young people from the former Soviet Union, called the FLEX program. Both programs celebrated last year significant birthdays. FLEX is 30 years old and YES is 20 years old. And they've probably brought in about 70,000 people, young people from all over the world to the United States over the past 20 to 30 years to live with American host families and go to American high schools. And we like to say to learn all about America, the good, the bad, and, you know, the like really not great, but just the more realistic compared to what they see on television. And all alumni go home with long-lasting ties to Americans, no matter where they live in the United States. I've met students who've been hosted in Alaska, Hawaii, Arkansas, all over the place. We hosted a student as well. So about 15 years ago, the State Department said we shouldn't just be bringing people in, we should be sending American young people out to have similar experiences. So this is what Evan did. Evan was one of our 65 Yes Abroad students to go to somewhere between 11 and 14 countries around the world. Yes countries, not all yes countries, but select yes countries, to learn about life in some of those countries and to build relationships with people in Senegal, Morocco, Bosnia, India, Southeast Asia, Turkey, all over the place, and to go to school and to teach people about America, again, whatever America looks like for them, and to learn about life in a foreign country, and honestly, to develop skills that will last them a lifetime. And just a few years ago, because we were, you know, kind of so successful with this, the State Department started sending American kids back to some flex countries. So there's currently 26 flex countries. It's been expanded since just the former Soviet Union. Now it includes other Eastern Bloc countries, Greece, Mongolia. And again, it's for the purpose of building relationships between our countries and teaching us about one another. So these are full scholarships, and they're 10 months long, and you live with a host family when you go overseas. The host families are found and vetted through the implementing organizations. We are the main administration of both Flex Abroad and Yes Abroad, and we implement all of the Flex Abroad countries, and we implement 1/3 of the Yes Abroad countries. And we have partners we've worked with for a long time who implement the other countries. So they find the families, they monitor students. We have a whole list of guidelines from the State Department on how we're to do this. Just this week, I was reading through student surveys that all come to me and my colleagues in Washington, D.C., and those go on to the State Department. So there's a heavy oversight, but at the same time, it's not like a summer camp or something. It's something where a person goes and lives in a family and has to get themselves to school each day. We show them how to do this, right? Christina and Fatu, they showed Evan and his group how to use public transportation and how to avoid being scammed in a taxi. And language classes would make them go out and negotiate with people and teach them the skills of how to do this. And they have a family at home who make sure they eat and make sure they come home on time. In fact, Evan's family was very insistent he would be home quite early. So host families take student safety quite seriously. They go to school, they make friends. The office organizes enhancement activities for the students here and there. It kind of depends on where you are globally, how engaged you are with the primary office versus how much like a regional office or your family and extended family would engage you. And then, you come back home the following May and June. The requirements for this are that you be currently enrolled in high school. Going back, sorry for the slide.
Oh, sorry.
Currently enrolled in high school, a U.S. citizen, and there's birth dates. They're very stringent. The State Department doesn't make exceptions. So for the State Department, so for Yes Abroad and Flex Abroad, you need to be 15 by next June 30th, and you can't be older than 18 and a half. I have one other program I wanted to bring your attention to. It's a little bit different than a cultural exchange. It's a secondary language immersion program. So it's very specifically for security languages. And it's only for American students. But I bring it up because the same application can be used for all three of these programs. You have one combined application for all three programs. It's called the National Security Language Initiative for Youth. They have this next year approximately 400 scholarships, about 3/4 of which are summer programs, and the other 1/4 are 10 months, just like Yes Abroad and Flex Abroad. In fact, some of our students overlap in the same countries, like in Morocco, for example. We have Nestle Y students at the same time we have Yes Abroad students implemented by the same organization. So it's the same requirements for enrolling. It's also a scholarship. They have a little bit larger of a birth date range, and their birth date ranges depend on which language you're applying for. So with Yes Abroad and Flex Abroad, you're applying for the program, and there's multiple countries you can go to. You can rank your choices, but you can be sent anywhere. And as Evan will tell you, if you're not prepared to go anywhere and be flexible, you don't have the flexibility for this program. So we do take your kind of choices into consideration, but we also have other requirements that keep us. We, for example, in Senegal, we can put any age range, but we also need somebody who speaks French at least a little bit, because they're also going to be studying Wolof as well. The only other place where that's the case as well is Morocco. So students need to speak French to go to Morocco, because they're also going to be learning Darija while they're there and going to school. And in both Senegal and Morocco, that you go to school in French. And in Morocco, a little bit in Arabic too that you learn. But there's no language requirements for any of the programs at all. And like I said, they're full scholarships. And the due dates for the application for Nestle Y, it's November 4th, and for the other two programs, December 4th. But again, you can fill them out together. And there's just like 1 or 2 extra essays if you're doing Yes Abroad and Flex Abroad. So that's it for me. We have some ways to get in touch later on in the slideshow, and I'll let us move on to the next one.
Thank you so much, Sky. I think even I learned some more about the programs. So just specifically some points about Yes in Senegal, but most of these points are actually, now that I'm really looking at it, are pretty general, and they cover, like Sky mentioned, whether the students are going to be going, if they're Yes Abroad students, if they're going to be going to Senegal or any of the other many countries that Yes Abroad could be sent to. And then same for the Yes Inbound, like we said, students from other countries who are coming to the US, these points pretty much apply to all of them, how they're being prepared before and after their program. So in Senegal specifically, the Yes program was implemented in 2007, and we accept about 12 finalists per year. So these are Senegalese finalists that are going through a pretty difficult competition, academic and cultural interviews, all sorts of tests that they have to go through to be accepted and become a finalist on the program. They are placed throughout the United States. Like Sky mentioned, we've had students go to Alaska, to Hawaii, to Arkansas, to Ohio. I mean, all over the United States, very different experiences per student. Everybody lives with a host family. Some students are placed in double placements. They'll never be placed with a student of their same country, or even with a student who shares their same mother tongue, with the same language. So like a Moroccan student who speaks French and a Senegalese student who speaks French, they're not going to share a host family. But a Senegalese student who speaks French and I don't know, Bosnian student who speaks, Sky, what do they speak in Bosnia? Bosnian? They could be placed in the same host family, for example. So for this program, for the inbound program, a basic level of English is required. This is something that we test the students for in the application process before they're allowed to become a finalist and go to the United States. They have to have a basic level of English, which is not required for the Yes Abroad program. As Sky mentioned, there's no language requirement for Yes Abroad or Flex Abroad. And then, of course, before they depart, they receive a pre-departure orientation where we talk to them about a lot of cultural communication, all sorts of potential challenges, differences, just ways that they can start to prepare themselves, adapt once they're in the United States, and better deal with difficult situations once they get there. And then we also host a reentry orientation for the students once they return to Senegal or to their respective country, to kind of look back over the past year that they've spent, parce que quand même un an, c'est beaucoup, that they've spent in the United States, and just talk about reverse culture shock, how to deal with their experiences, how to fit back into their home community and their families after that life-changing experience. And then Yes Abroad. So for the Americans coming to Senegal, this program was implemented in Senegal in 2009. Every year, Senegal specifically accepts about 5 to 6 participants, which I think, Sky, correct me if I'm wrong, is roughly the same for most countries, about 5 to 6 participants for Yes and
That's
Flex
right.
Abroad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no fewer than 3 and usually no more than 7. Yep.
Perfect. For us in Senegal, all of the students are placed in Dakar, the capital city, and they're all with host families, individual host families. As Sky mentioned, this is the same also for all the countries. Everybody's in a host family. Everybody's attending local high school. That's a requirement of the program, Flex and Yes Abroad. They will be attending high school. Even if they're considered a gap year student, when they do come on program, they will be going to local high school. French is not required per se to come to Senegal, as Sky mentioned.
It's
but
only
they
if I
do
can,
take it.
if I can talk Christina and Fatu
Yeah.
into taking somebody who doesn't speak French, but it's usually you need to speak French to go to one of those 2 places. Yeah.
Yeah, because as Sky mentioned, they will be attending high school, and in Senegal, there's not much of a choice. They have to do the curriculum in French. So even if the student has just a basic level of French, they're going to want to put them in Senegal most likely, or Morocco potentially. And then while they're on program, we're very much involved with them throughout the entire year, throughout the entire school year. They participate in activities, in volunteering. They partner with the inbound alumni, so Senegalese students who have gone to the US and come back. They love meeting the Yes Abroad students who are in country and working with them and doing activities together. We bring them on excursions throughout the country during the year. We have orientations with them throughout the year as well to check in and make sure that they are adapting and doing well. And the host family process, like Sky mentioned also, is a process. Fatu and I work very hard to find great host families for all the students and make sure that they go through all the necessary checks and everything, which is the same in every country, any country that the Yes Abroad student would go to. Yeah, I think that's about it. Just some photos of the past 2 Yes Abroad cohorts. Evan should be in one of these photos, or a couple of them. I think down there at the embassy, the US Embassy in Dakar, Evan's right in the middle. But yeah, just some photos of our last 2 Yes Abroad cohorts in Senegal, participating in different activities, excursions, going to Lac Rose, s'il y a des gens ici qui connaissent déjà le Sénégal, le Monument de la Renaissance, l'ambassade des États-Unis. Et en haut à gauche, c'est une photo là où le groupe a participé dans une activité de bénévolat dans une école pour apprendre l'anglais aux petits-enfants. Donc, beaucoup d'activités, beaucoup d'excursions pendant toute l'année. C'est vraiment un échange culturel, pas un échange académique, si je peux le dire ainsi. Et Fatou, c'est à toi.
Merci, Christina. Cultural preparation. So for both Yes and Yes Abroad students, various cultural preparation topics that will improve their cultural understanding and adaptability also will be covered during their PDO. And for respect, politeness, and shyness, the topics will help them understand how important is having a positive attitude because it could affect others' perceptions of them. They will also understand how expressing gratitude can improve their interactions and also build strong bonds with their host families. They will also familiarize themselves with common phrases of appreciation that they can use in their everyday conversation with their host communities in general. And when it comes to shyness, we emphasize on the importance of directness in communication, asking questions also, and what is the meaning of having eye contacts in their host communities. And for family, community, and school life, students will have practical orientations that will help them understand, firstly, their own family dynamics and values, which will make it easier to integrate a new host family. They will also learn about the different family structures to foster empathy and differences. They will learn about adaptation and flexibility so as to anticipate some potential differences. And for school, they will learn about the similarities and the differences between their home schools and their host schools, which will include the curriculum structure, the teaching styles, some available extracurricular activities also, and what will be the class size. And they will also learn some common school rules and regulation, and what will be the consequences of rule violation. And food being a significant part of culture and family, this section will prepare students to understand different food etiquettes, like communal eating and eating alone also, and cleaning after lunch. We will also cover the importance for students to communicate their food restriction, and also being prepared to cook their own food if ever they are following any restriction. They will also be encouraged to be curious, to try new food, and also understand how preparing meals together can be a good way to share cultural practices and learn about their host family cooking and also share their own cooking style. And for social etiquette and time orientation, students will learn about friendship dynamics and what are some steps they can take to make friends, like engaging in different social activities and taking initiative to make friends while keeping in mind some privacy awareness. What are some topics they should be discussing with their friends and which ones they should keep private. They will also learn about the importance of punctuality and personal hygiene and other social norms related to dress code and for male-female rules. Students will be prepared for different attitudes regarding gender, like the gender-neutral roles related to house tasks and other responsibilities. For example, boys doing laundry may be new for some boys, and equal authority also. For example, women being the house leaders in some houses will be new for some people because it's not the case in many countries. And they will learn also to be adapting to new gender roles. And when it comes to religion, students will be prepared to explore local customs, be open-minded, and respectful also to different beliefs and practices. They will be encouraged to observe how their family are engaging with their faith and their community also. And participation in religious activities being a personal choice, students will be, however, encouraged to be flexible so as to attend religious practices and experience all facets of their host families and their host communities also. And they will be motivated to ask questions because religion can be a great cultural exchange to promote mutual understanding and also create very meaningful conversations. And we can say that our students are very flexible when it comes to religion. Yes, abroad students, for example, are taking their own initiative to fast during Ramadan and also to volunteer with their local friends while here in Senegal. And yes, students are doing also their volunteering activities in the local churches. So to sum up, as part of the cultural preparation, students will learn different tools such as adaptation, being flexible, showing gratitude also, the importance of effective communication, and taking initiative. And these tools will help them approach their cultural exchange with curiosity and openness, but also to build connections while understanding and respecting cultural differences. So this is quite a summary of the cultural preparation students are receiving during their PDO.
Perfect. Thank you, Fatu. And just to build on that a little bit, so like Fatu mentioned, those are all points, those are all topics that students, whether they're coming from another country to the US or from the US to a foreign country for the Yes Abroad or Flex Abroad program, these are all similar points that are discussed with them prior to their departure, prior to their program, in order to better prepare them. And then along the same lines, some cultural or communication differences and challenges that we often see both ways, right? In both types of cohorts, whether they're Americans going abroad or others going to the US. Some common issues that we see kind of across the board to keep in mind if if you have a student in mind, for example, who you think would be a good fit for the program, just some things to possibly look at and see if they're able to adapt to it or be flexible. So being able to adapt to more hierarchical communities in regards to age, social status, such as having a certain level of respect towards teachers, community and religious leaders, that might not be the same for them here in the United States, where we're often used to, especially at the high school level, maybe calling our teachers by their first name or something like that, where most of the countries where students would be placed abroad, that's not the case, right? It's very much sir, madame, les choses comme ça. So definitely also being comfortable in uncomfortable situations, being able to deal with that uncomfortability in any sort of situation. Like Sky mentioned, even from the application stage, right? If the student is not willing to be placed in any of these Yes or Flex Abroad countries, they're not flexible enough to participate on the program. So right from the get-go, I think it's a good way to tell if they're really able to demonstrate that level of flexibility that's necessary for the program. They're in completely new environments, completely new countries, families, schools, language, everything is different. So really being able to be uncomfortable and still thrive, or still function at least, is definitely necessary. Understanding that there's quite a difference between how Americans communicate and how others do, indirect versus direct communication. We often see in Senegal, for example, specifically, that students will wait for their host families to specifically tell them to do something, whereas most of our host families practice more indirect communication. They think that, well, the student should be able to observe what the family is doing or what the other kids in the family are doing and just follow suit, right? Like be able to follow along and pick up on it. Whereas, and then if the student does not do so, the family comes to us, complains, says that the student is not participating in household chores, for example, like the other kids in the family are. And then we talk to the student about it, and the student says, well, nobody asked me to do it. Nobody pointed it out and told me I need to do this. So being able to understand that difference of communication and pick up on it a little easier. Going into the same thing, diplomacy versus bluntness, right? When it comes to asking permission or following along, being observant, being able to tell what's going on in the family without being so blunt about it, because a lot of host families in other countries are not going to come right out, sorry, and say what they're expecting or say what they're asking for. They're going to expect that the student can observe and pick up on it. Having agency and independence versus asking permission and following someone's lead. Once again, something that differs country to country, especially in terms of American students going abroad. I think in Senegal, we see this both ways. We see students who have a lot more agency and independence when they're in the United States. They have a lot more freedom to kind of go out, do what they want, of course, keep their parents informed, but have a lot more freedom in general. And then when they come to Senegal, they are often placed in a family that wants them home by a certain time, that has other stricter rules than they're used to. We also have the opposite, where maybe their natural parents back in the United States are very, 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 very strict. And then they come to Senegal, and it's the opposite. They have a bit more freedom to kind of go out, do what they want because they are on this program. And there are rules, of course, but not so strict as their natural family rules. So just being able to adapt, understand that it's going to be a different situation either way. And then language barriers. So even if students who are placed in Senegal, for example, might have a basic level of French, it's still going to take some adapting, right? It's going to take some getting used to. And then especially for other countries, if a student applies and they end up going to Bosnia or Turkey or North Macedonia, where they have never studied that language before, it's going to be hard, right? And they need to have that motivation to not only learn it and go to class and everything like that, but also really use the language, right? And we see that even in Senegal, where students may come in with a basic level of French, but then they get there and they're often with their cohorts, they're often with us, and they just rely on English. They might have host family members who speak a little English. And so that motivation to really use the language and improve it is hard to keep up during 9 months on program, for example. Which I can say that Evan did a wonderful job while he was on program of using his French and also really learning Wolof while he was in Senegal. So maybe Evan can talk to you a little bit more about how he kept his motivation up for 9 months, because it was very impressive.
And Christina, can I just add, we wouldn't expect that anybody is perfect at being diplomatic at 16,
Right.
that they're, regularly, oh yeah, sure, I love being uncomfortable. It's great, but it's that you accept that that's it. Like, none of these things are easy. They are all hard. And that is what somebody who is successful on program needs to have, is the ability to accept that these things are different, that they are hard, and to be patient with themselves and to push themselves and to be motivated, like Christina said, and ultimately to adapt. We've had students who kind of fight these cultural differences all year long, and life is always hard for them, and they're always unhappy, and it's always somebody else's fault. I think the soonest you realize, like, oh, it's on me to adapt. It's on me to we always say it's not better, not worse, just different, that you accept that the different that you're living in is your new normal and adapt to it, the easier your life becomes.
And with that, we'll move on to some of our alumni experiences. Evan, if you'd like to go first, and feel free to speak in French since we have not been doing so far, but up to you. Just share a little bit about your experience on program in Senegal, being a Yes Abroad student, maybe some of the challenges, some of the highlights, anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So, vous m'entendez bien? J'espère.
Yeah.
Donc, avant de commencer, je veux dire, je crois qu'on est aussi rejoint par une de mes anciennes professeurs du français. Donc, Madame Van Meren, je voulais vous remercier d'être venue. Voilà, donc bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Evan et je viens de Buffalo, New York. Et donc, j'ai été participant au Sénégal pendant la période 2022 à 2023. Et donc, j'habitais à Dakar avec une famille sénégalaise, comme on a déjà dit. Et j'allais à un lycée sénégalais aussi, où je suivais des cours en français. Donc, actuellement, je continue mes études aux Pays-Bas, à l'University College Utrecht, où j'étudie la science politique et la linguistique. Mais donc, mon expérience au Sénégal, je crois, peut-être, je voulais commencer avec un de mes souvenirs préférés de mon année d'échange. Donc, je suis venu à Dakar au mois de septembre, je crois. Et donc, j'ai commencé à m'habituer un peu à la vie sénégalaise. J'ai commencé à me faire des amis à l'école, à apprendre le Wolof un peu, à saluer mes voisins et tout ça. Et donc, je me sentais plus ou moins chez moi. Pourtant, le mois de décembre est arrivé. Et donc, je regardais ma famille à New York. Ils fêtaient la fête de Noël et tout ça. Ils m'ont trop manqué. Et en plus, j'ai fini par avoir l'intoxication alimentaire. Et ouais, donc c'était la première fois que j'étais malade sans mes parents. Et je vous promets, c'était la misère. Mais donc, je me couchais au lit un jour et mon papa d'accueil, il est venu me chercher pour me dire, il m'a dit, Kai Nudem, on y va, je t'amène à l'hôpital. Et donc, on y est allé, on m'a donné des médicaments et à 2 heures du matin, plus ou moins, je crois, on est rentré chez nous. Et donc, ce que je ne m'attendais pas, c'était de voir ma maman d'accueil, encore éveillée. Euh, et c'est elle qui nous attendait avec son sac et ses chaussures au cas où il fallait venir passer la nuit avec moi à l'hôpital. Donc, c'était en ce moment-là que je me suis rendu compte que cette homesickness que je ressentais avant, ce n'était pas du tout nécessaire. En fait, j'étais déjà chez moi et il y avait des raisons pour lesquelles j'étais au Sénégal. Et donc, voilà, c'est ça que j'ai appris au Sénégal. C'est que c'est possible de créer une communauté, même si c'est hyper loin de chez soi. Euh, et voilà, c'est arrivé avec ma famille d'accueil, mais aussi avec les autres élèves à l'école, avec mes voisins, etc. Et bien sûr que j'ai appris beaucoup d'indépendance, de responsabilité. Et je crois que c'est ça qui est unique au programme Yes et Yes Abroad, parce que c'est une opportunité non pas de vivre, mais d'apprendre à vivre dans une culture que vous ne connaissez pas, euh, euh, mais quand même avec le soutien du programme. Et voilà, donc je crois que c'est pour cela que j'ai beaucoup changé depuis le début jusqu'à la fin de l'année. Et donc, bien sûr que ce n'était pas du tout facile. Je crois il est hyper dur d'être inconfortable tout le temps, genre d'entendre des perspectives dont on n'est pas d'accord, euh, d'avoir du mal à s'exprimer, etc. Mais je crois à la fin de ce programme, la manière dont j'ai changé, dont j'ai grandi, et le fait que ça s'est fait que pendant un an, euh, c'est ça qui me pousse à vouloir recommander ce programme à tous les élèves. Donc, yeah, I suppose as just a final note, yeah, I mean, I can only recommend the Yes and Yes Abroad program. Yeah, I mean, I think all of us here agree on the importance of intercultural exchange, and yeah, I think that the Yes and the Yes Abroad programs they really do an amazing job of making that truly accessible for young people. So yeah, and I think also that the skills that I learned uh, non pas est-ce que c'était important pendant mon échange, mais après. Donc, je reste toujours en contact avec ma famille d'accueil. On s'appelle une fois chaque 2 semaines, comme ça. Et en fait, je suis censé revenir dans 2 semaines, je crois. Ouais, heureusement. Donc, j'en ai trop hâte. So, yeah, truly, it's an amazing program. Yeah, I can only recommend. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Evan. And Shireen, would you like to share a little bit about your experience on program in the United States?
Of course, of course. So, hello everyone. Bonjour à tous. Vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Oui.
Oui, d'accord. Donc, je m'appelle Oumouhaïri Chérine. J'ai participé au YES programme en 2023-2024. Je viens de rentrer au Sénégal et j'étais placée en Caroline du Nord dans une famille libérienne. Donc, l'année d'échange, au début, franchement, c'était difficile pour moi. La partie la plus difficile, c'était la langue, franchement, parce que ma famille libérienne avait un certain accent et j'étais dans le sud aussi, donc il y avait un certain accent, les professeurs avaient un accent. Donc, c'était assez difficile pour moi, mais j'ai pu quand même m'adapter. Tout était différent, honnêtement. Le système scolaire, les mentalités, la langue, la culture, tout était différent. Et même si on a été très bien préparés par Christina et Fatou, il y avait quand même ce choc culturel. Les premiers mois, j'étais vraiment homesick. I was really homesick. Et c'était dur pour moi, mais franchement, grâce à Dieu, je me suis adaptée. Et je pense que ce qui m'a vraiment aidé à m'adapter, c'est mes camarades de classe et ma famille d'accueil. Ils m'ont poussé, ils m'ont aidé à participer à des clubs, à parler. Et j'ai vraiment été touchée par la gentillesse de tous les professeurs, particulièrement mon professeur de maths. Il m'a vraiment aidé. Ils m'ont poussé à participer à des clubs. Ils m'ont poussé à prendre la parole et j'ai pu participer à des activités extrascolaires. Le système scolaire étant plus léger, il m'a permis de faire des activités hors de l'école et c'était vraiment une expérience incroyable. Jusqu'à présent, je parle à mes camarades de classe, mes amis, et j'ai vraiment hâte de retourner là-bas. Et il y a surtout quelque chose qui m'a marqué. Au début de l'année, ma professeure d'anglais nous avait demandé à toute la classe, quel est le rêve américain? Donc, moi, bien sûr, j'étais nouvelle, donc je me demandais, que puis-je dire? Parce que le rêve américain, c'est ce que je vois dans les films, mais je lui ai dit que je pense que le rêve américain dépend de chaque personne. Chacun a son rêve en venant aux États-Unis et il dépend des gens. Mais après avoir eu mon expérience aux États-Unis, la culture, comment c'était différent, je pense franchement que le rêve américain, c'est le fait que tu aies la chance de partager ta culture, de parler aux gens qui sont différents, de t'entendre, de t'adapter pendant un an, d'apprendre. C'est surtout ça qui m'a touchée. Ce programme m'a apporté beaucoup de maturité, beaucoup d'ouverture, plus de confiance en soi. J'arrivais à parler aux gens. Il m'a facilité l'ouverture d'esprit parce que je pense que la façon dont les gens communiquent ici au Sénégal est très différente de la façon dont les gens communiquent aux États-Unis. Et j'ai dû apprendre à communiquer d'une autre manière avec mes camarades de classe, avec mes professeurs, à vraiment à m'exprimer et à dire ce que je voulais, quelque chose dont je n'étais pas forcément habituée parce que ici au Sénégal, on s'attend plus à ce que les gens savent ce que tu veux, donc tu n'as pas besoin tout le temps de l'exprimer. Mais ici, tu dois vraiment dire ce que tu veux, ce qui te dérange, ce qui te dérange. Si tu as des problèmes, tu dois en parler. Donc, au début, c'était dur pour moi. Mais après 2 mois, 3 mois, je me suis vraiment adaptée. Et je pense que j'ai vécu une des meilleures années de ma vie. J'ai rencontré des personnes extraordinaires. Des fois, je regarde mes souvenirs dans ma galerie photo et j'y pense encore. Parce que j'ai l'impression que c'était un rêve que tu as vécu et maintenant que tu es de retour, ça te donne un peu cette idée de I don't really know if it really happens actually because it just feels like I was in the bubble for like a year et c'est vraiment une expérience mémorable et je suis vraiment contente d'avoir participé à ce programme. Maintenant que je suis rentrée, je suis en train de rattraper ma classe de première au Sénégal avant de faire la classe de terminale. C'est assez intense, mais je ne regretterai jamais d'avoir participé à ce programme parce qu'il m'a rapporté tellement de choses. And I'm really so grateful for everything. So yeah, that's kind of little side of my experience.
Merci, Shireen. And just to say it again, both Evan and Shireen both mentioned it, but we really do see, I think all the American Council staff on this call would be in agreement that we see such a big shift, a change, right, with all of the students, whether they're yes abroad, yes inbound, flex, anybody who goes abroad and comes back to their home country afterwards, they have changed so much. They have gained so much knowledge, so many social skills, maturity. They've just really grown into themselves. And I think for Fatu and I, we talk about this every year because it's so satisfying to see that, right? When students come back and they have learned so much, they've grown so much during their year abroad. It's really incredible to see. Yeah. Okay, I think this slide is for Amanda, talking about becoming a host family. If any of the teachers on the call in your communities would be interested in doing so, or if you know others who are. We're always looking for more host families, right, Amanda?
Absolutely. Similar to Sky, I did know French once upon a time. I can understand most of what you guys are saying, but It's been like 15 years since I studied it. So I'm going to speak English for the purposes of this webinar. It's really great to hear from alumni on both sides. I work for American Council's placement organization, so we're one of 13 or 14 organizations that get Flex and Yes students, and that includes students from Senegal. We don't have a student from Senegal this year. I was very sad. There's not enough students for every organization to have one. So this year we did not get a student from Senegal, but we've had more than 10 over the years, and I've had the opportunity to meet most of them. We've placed them everywhere from Hawaii to Iowa to the DC area. So they've been all over the country. And I definitely have witnessed some of them I've met at the very beginning of the year, like, maybe on a site visit or their DC orientation when they first arrive. And I meet them mostly in April, right before they leave. And there's a huge difference in everything. It's really interesting to see. We are always looking for host families, as Christina mentioned. Thank you for putting the website here. Even though we have our cohort of students for the 2024-25 program year, we're already thinking ahead to the next year. So as early as November, we actually open up our host family application for people to apply to host next year. And if we know that we have someone who's interested in a student from Senegal, we will ask the Yes team to give us a student from Senegal. So my pitch would be especially for people who their families, like maybe if you studied abroad in Senegal, or any of these other countries, then it's a great reciprocal exchange. We've had quite a few families that have been like Yes Abroad families have hosted one of our students, or Nisley families have hosted one of our students, for example. So it's a really good way to kind of connect and remember what you love about the exchange world. So you can note this website here. It also has a list of like what all the requirements are to host. The students that come here, as Shireen mentioned, they do go to school. They speak English every day. They live with all different kinds of families. We've had students in big families with kids. We've had students with single adults, empty nesters, the works. So I don't know if there's much else that I should say about the hosting piece, but again, we start accepting applications as early as November before we even get all of our applications, so that if we know that people are interested in hosting students from certain countries, we can request those when they start getting distributed to us.
I just add a couple of points just to clarify. So first of all, host students can share rooms. You don't have to have your own room. And like Amanda said, there's kind of no one way a host family looks. The United States is diverse. The students who are coming to us are diverse. You really just need to be a place that has kind of some emotional time and physical time to add somebody to your household. Amanda put a student with us when I had a 1.5 and a 4.5-year-old, and they said, which one of these 4 do you want? And I said, literally anyone that can get himself to and from the metro, that I don't have to worry about feeding. Like I'll get food for him, but I don't have, he's not a baby. He's not a small child. But also if your kid likes playing video games, there's, the host student that plays video games. So the other thing is, American Councils, as Amanda said, is one of about 13 or 14 placement organizations. So Amanda and her team work at our office in Washington, D.C., but we're actually different departments. I work on like Flex and Yes administration. Our office works with Amanda's team, and we also work with 12 or 13 other placement organizations. And so no one placement organization has kind of capacity in every 50 state, right? One of the things we also have to have is a local coordinator. So maybe you can't host, but you'd be willing to be an intermediary between Amanda's department and a host family, and you have time to kind of spend time if there's a challenge to work on, and you have experience, you studied abroad maybe, and you remember what it's like, and you have those abilities to help out. I'm sure they also are always looking for local coordinators. And that's what needs to happen. A local coordinator needs to be within 2 hours drive of a host family. So if you still want to host, and for example, there aren't any American Council's local coordinators nearby, there are a number of other organizations you can find. Potentially, you've even heard of them yourself before. Maybe you studied abroad in high school. So this would be like AFS, YFU, CIEE, PACS, a number of them, they all run private study abroad programs as well, where you can pay to go overseas. And so Flex and Yes are kind of just some of the programs they work on besides their own private programs. So if you can't find, if you know there's like a very busy, involved AFS chapter near you, you can like reach out. You can find on yesprograms.org/host. And then there's also a link for the Flex program as well. And if that doesn't work, or maybe you know somebody who's interested in hosting like a German student, there's also a State Department citizen diplomacy program for Germany. It's called the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange. Sends American kids outbound. I think their application closes in November as well. And it brings German kids inbound. And those are also full scholarships. So there's a lot of ways you can get involved. And Amanda's organization is just one, but we also like recommend it because they're great.
And this is a great question about US high schools. Absolutely. US high schools sometimes do pose a challenge. Some of them have really early deadlines, like we won't take a student past March 1st. And you know, sometimes we're still getting applications around that time. Sometimes they reach a quota, like we'll only take this number of students and we've already got our full allotment. And sometimes they fill up with private students whose applications come in earlier than the Flex and Yes ones. So that can pose a challenge. You know, knowing the status of the school is something that when we have local coordinators that work in areas, one of their kind of responsibilities is to find out whether schools are open to taking students and what those deadlines are. And, you know, sometimes they'll have requirements for age and minimum English proficiency, but most of the challenges we run into are based around deadlines and whether they have open spots. And then we have to, you know, but I will say that being able to go to schools and say, hey, we have reciprocal outbound programs is a very, very big draw for US high schools. Most of them don't have the ability to offer exchanges, or maybe they're short-term exchanges. So Yes and Flex Abroad and NISLE are of a lot of interest to US high schools, and we're always encouraging their students to apply as well to go abroad. And then, yeah, Sky mentioned F1 visas. Some of those are competition, because if you're on an F1 visa, then you're paying to come to school in the US, and you usually stay for 4 years, and those host families get paid, and volunteer host families don't get paid. So that's another nuance we have to compete with.
I want to speak to one thing. I was going to put this in the chat too. I think sometimes it can be hard. You know, I spend a lot of time talking to parents and to students who say they really want to do something, but their parents won't let them, or a parent kind of demanding to know how I'll keep their kids safe, which is certainly our first goal. But as I like to say, you know, I have 2 kids myself, and they live in my house, and I can't guarantee their safety. A lot of it is, you know, most of our students, I think all of us students I've ever talked to on Yes Abroad and Flex Abroad, say they feel safer living in a foreign country than they do living in America sometimes. But we also know that this is a big leap to go from, you know, maybe having never traveled overseas, which plenty of our students have never traveled overseas before, to living for 10 months. There's a lot of kind of stair steps that go along with this. So what I was going to post here is that there's actually also a virtual NISLE program. The application's open as well. So if you ever wanted to, you know, see if your kid likes studying languages, there's an option. It's also, again, a full scholarship. They do that on the computer. NISLE-wise Summer is 6 weeks long, and it's very structured, and they have a resident director who sees them every day. A lot of students will do NISLE-wise Summer, and then they can apply to do an academic year program after that. You can't do 2 academic year programs, or you can't do 1 10-month program and then do a summer program, but you can do these stair steps. And I think hosting is also like a really good way to see if studying abroad is something your child would be good at or interested in. So many of our students who are very successful overseas on Yes Abroad and Flex Abroad hosted, and they saw like, oh, this person had to be super adaptable. Oh, it's not always like fun and games, right? Like you have to work hard to create a relationship. So if you're, again, not sure if your kid is interested or that you're ready to let them go overseas, hosting somebody can be a good stair step. And these are some links that you can go to. I think, Christina, we can send this all these links out when this recording goes out as well.
Yeah, and I think Katie, you already shared the slides with the participants, right? So they should all have access to these links, I think.
That's right. Unless somebody signed up in the last maybe 24 hours, you should have received a PDF version of all of this. And I can definitely resend it out again to anybody who maybe signed up in the last day and a half.
So if you want to apply for Yes Abroad, Flex Abroad, or Nestle Y, I just put the Yes Abroad website here. You can go to the other websites too. I can pop them in the chat in a second, but the same apply now button is going to take you to the application for all three. There's also lots of videos on the Yes Abroad page that talk about what does safety and security look like overseas. How do I write a competitive application? Kind of a day in the life of what life is like for a student. We've covered a lot of that here. The Nestle Y website also has tons of information. I'll put that down here. And both of the programs have YouTube channels as well. So I know I have a playlist on the Yes Abroad YouTube that has like all participant videos. So things that you have ever wanted to see what it's like from a student's perspective. There's about 30 of them on there that I looked through and I was like, yeah, these seem right? These seem accurate. Nobody's saying I go on vacation every day and I have adventure tourism. They're like, yeah, I go to school, I do homework, I hang out with my host family and drink coffee. And then if you're interested in general in any kind of exchange programs, I also put the exchanges.state.gov on there. The very first question it asks you is, are you a US citizen? Are you a citizen of another country? And then you can sort by like school, like high school, college, grad school, professional exchanges. There's so many exchanges out there that the State Department has that are all kind of in the name of citizen diplomacy, all scholarship, and they're really amazing.
Thank you so much. We have about a minute left, and I definitely want to give an opportunity for some questions. And also just wanted to say that if you are interested in traveling to Senegal, you can scan this QR code and sign up for our next informational meeting. We also have another webinar about girls' education in Senegal coming up on December 7th, if those are things that are interesting for you. And voilà, des questions si vous en avez en français ou en anglais pour Evan, Shireen, Christina, Amanda, Sky, Fatou, comme vous voudrez. You can unmute if you do have any questions. I know they're really thorough and those links will be really helpful. I'm going to take a look at those videos as well. That will be an interesting resource for us. I think as French teachers, one thing that is like so amazing is to have heard Evan speaking in French like that. I think it gives us all like a lot of hope and inspiration, and the conversations that Shireen was sharing and Christina, the preparation for the cross-cultural things. These are things I think French educators today want to do more than just language. And you guys address so much of that so well for us. Just kind of gives us an extra like, oh yeah, like these things are working in real life. So that's really great to hear. I see there's some things in the chat. I can't see the chat. I'm going to pop that up.
Just to add one thing, if there aren't any questions, in terms of host families, since COVID, it has been difficult every year for all students from all these different countries coming to the US to be placed. Every year we do have students, several countries have students that unfortunately do not get placed because they don't find a host family. So I would just really encourage everybody here to either become a host family or just share it, right? Share it in your different communities with your friends, your colleagues. And especially if those families have, like Sky mentioned, have experience hosting before or doing exchanges themselves or anything like that. I mean, that's really the ideal. But even if they don't, just really encouraging people to apply to become a host family, because on the ground, we hate seeing, and of course the placement organizations as well, we all hate seeing students who have gone through this rigorous process of being selected to participate on the program, but then can't go abroad can't go to the US because a host family is not found in time, unfortunately. So definitely keep that in mind. Become a host family.
And if you missed it in the chat, Sky did say if you'd like to have a guest speaker in your class, you can reach out to her directly, or you could contact me and I can reach out to her. I think that sounds like a really amazing opportunity to hear some of those firsthand stories in French for our students would be really, really fun and exciting. And thank you for being willing to share that. Je vous remercie tous d'être venus aujourd'hui. I think we're going to end this now. I did see a few people just joined recently. They might have gotten the time zones a little bit off. So if you want to stay afterwards, I also do have a recording of the session today. And if you signed up, as I mentioned before, in the last day or day and a half, I can send out a PDF of these slides to you as well. So I can just send that out to everybody to make sure that everybody has access to that information, and hope that you will maybe get involved in one way, whether it's a guest speaker, hosting, encouraging your students to learn about it now, plant that seed. We know that travel is one of the best ways to learn, and living there even better than just traveling. So merci, merci. And thanks, DC people, you're my neighbors, so maybe we can get in touch in person. I'm in Arlington, Virginia. And I just thank you so much all for being here today. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Merci
organizing. This was
beaucoup.
great.
À la
Thanks,
prochaine.
Christina.
Merci.
Bye, Evan. See ya.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye-bye.
Merci. Take a pop into the chat again. Oh, poster and brochures too. That's nice.
Hi, my name is Ellie. I am student teaching for French and Spanish next semester. I totally did get the time zones mixed up, and I would love the recording.
Sure, I can easily share that with you probably by email in the next 24 hours, okay?
Okay, would you like me, could I drop my email in the chat?
You must have signed up to get this link,
I
right?
did. Mhm.
Yeah, so I'll have your email address. I can just send it there, but you can pop it in the chat too, just to be sure. Where are you student teaching?
In Lexington, Nebraska.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And I'm so glad that we're getting some more French and Spanish teachers in the field. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Merci.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna end the meeting. Merci.